Well, welcome back to the program live from Channels Television headquarters in Lagos, Nigeria. I am Bosin Amofayu. Now, join our rapidly expanding business and markets community here on Channels Television. You know our list of Twitter handles, Channels TV, or at This Morning, or at Bosin Business. Also, let's bring in Gabriel, who is a management consulting expert and analyst at Uhi Marjib, an accounting and consulting networks, to talk to us about the state of the economy. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning.
We appreciate it. Let's start from what just came in this morning, talking about Nigeria's manufacturing data for April from FBN Capital, showing that larger companies in Nigeria are recruiting less, output is declining, but the SMEs seem to be showing, quote, reasonable improvement, end of quote. Do you agree, looking at the economy towards 2014 and the first quarter of 2015, that this is a fair reflection of where we are?
Well, the smaller companies are not exposed to the same parameters that affect the bigger companies. First of all, they do not do a lot of importation. Their overheads are pretty within control, and the regulatory obligations are much lower. So they can grow their business in a country like Nigeria fairly regularly and steadily. But the bigger companies are exposed to all the elements, the big macroeconomic elements.
Which includes currencies, for example, currency behavior, misbehavior, as it were, depending on whether it's going up and down. If you into consulting, managing consulting firm, and you talk to a number of company CEOs in Nigeria, of executives, tell us about some of the things you've heard from them about the outlook for this economy from the last quarter of 2014 to early 2015 with regards to the elections and what happens thereafter.
Well, elections last quarter, last year, first quarter this year was elections and politics. Very little of business. As far as the big picture was, the larger companies were just trying to stay alive, try and do as much business as possible. 3/4 of the country, the northeast and part of that area, there was very little business. Most of them actually closed down their offices in that part of the country. So turnover obviously seriously affected. Then when you look at cost of doing business, petrol and diesel, the exchange rates, everything was moving in the direction of higher costs. And of course, the market was either flat or going down, because with rising prices, consumer power was going down. So you had everything crashing in, but they just had to do what they can in that environment.
Do you think, therefore, that the story from the smaller companies, the SMEs, according to this report just in this morning, showing that yes, the smaller or medium-sized companies are hiring more, companies that has between 50 and 200 employees seem to be hiring more, the output is growing. Do you think that moving forward we should concentrate more on these companies and not just on the ones with the big billboards on the highways?
No, yes, of course. In any economy, the SMEs hire easily between 80-90%. In some cases, up to 95% of the labor and of the workforce. The big companies have the visibility. They are well known all over the world. They are there in the big cities. But once you move out of major industries and you go to the industries that sustain us, transportation, food, it's all the small and medium businesses that do all of that. And even the big companies, most of the logistics support for the big companies rely again on the small companies. So really, in any economy, you are talking of the SMEs that are really 80-90%, whichever economy. So policy, by way of policy to support the economy, also has to look at how do you expand the capacity of the SMEs. What kind of support do you give them? Because that's the only way to grow the economy. You can't have 10, 20 largest companies on the stock exchange and have another 200 of those ones. It's not possible. But you can create 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 SMEs in any state in this country if you have the right policies and support them to go. But you can't build any huge plants over a 3 or 4 year period and then build another 20 of such plants in any industry.
So the SMEs are nimble, they're simple, they're close to the people, like local governments or municipals, if you want to put it that way, and they're easy and ready to go. Now, so in terms of the outlook for the second quarter, you talk about policies, and we're just heading into May 29 handover. What's your outlook for this quarter? You said in terms of policies, we should focus more. Do you suggest stimulus? What else do you suggest for this medium, lower end of our manufacturing industrial base?
Well, there is some amount of stimulus now. You have the SME fund, 220 billion.
With the central bank?
At the central bank, you have various states. But the issue is size and speed. If you look at the size of the Nigerian economy, 20 billion can go just like that. It won't do much. So you want to increase the speed with which you implement the stimulus. You want to increase the amount. If it's 200 billion, you can make it 5 times that.
So first, maybe I cut it quickly. You say the time from which applications are filing with the central bank or the Bank of Industry, or the Bank of Agriculture, to the time of which the end users get it should be shortened.
Much more shortened, because you want to make an impact. You don't do anything having the 220 billion sitting in a bank account, and you want this same 220 billion to work to create SMEs, expand SMEs, employ more people. So you need to move the money very quickly through the process and ensure that the money is actually working. And then you need to increase the size, because for a country of this size, 220 billion is just about starting to kick the process. You need to increase.
To fast track it, how much figure would you be thinking of as a management consultant? What figure?
Well, the point is, first of all, you have 36 states. If you have, let's say, every state, 500,000 SMEs, that gives you an idea of the kind of people you need to support. And if each SME will require, let's say, 5 million, 10 million, once you start doing those kind of numbers, then you see that you are looking at a much bigger figure.
So if we need to go like the way of the Chinese, we need about $1 trillion, don't you think so?
This is the point. You see, it's not the quality of policy now. There's a consensus in Nigeria about the right policies. You need to stimulate SMEs. You need to give them money. You need to give them technical support. You need to give them access to market. The quality of policies are right, but the size and the speed is what is missing. If you have, instead of 220, you have 1.5 billion. Instead of 220 billion, you have 1.5 trillion. And you have the capacity, that is a BOI and other institutions that can train and give support to these SMEs. Then you can grow the economy and you won't even think of the large companies.
Okay, so inauguration will just be here, but then there are concerns that some government contractors are worried about project continuity. Do you share this concern?
Yes, there is genuine reason for concern, because you expect this government to take another look at some of these contracts in terms of how they were awarded. Was there value for money? Was the progress so far made? So these questions will clearly arise. It would be wishful thinking to assume that government will just come in and be paying everybody and not asking questions. So that's the reality, that if you are a contractor now, you have to ask yourself, first of all, are my books okay? Did I do the right thing? If I say government is owing me 10 million, are they really owing me 10 million? Did I do value for 10 million that I'm supposed to collect? If I don't have all my books correct, then when the new government comes, I should expect a lot of questions.
So you expect the incoming administration to ask a lot of questions from May 29?
Absolutely.
In what sectors do you think there will be some focus?
So first of all, it's already clear. Oil and gas. Government has to look at what's going on in oil and gas. Infrastructure contracts, roads, bridges, what have you, they'll have to look at those.
The power plants?
The power plants. Power plants, those that are not yet sold, they might want to see how quickly the sales can be concluded. They need to get the sales concluded. Then, of course, the gas supply chain. Because you have a power plant without gas, it's no power plant. It's just sitting there. So the entire gas supply chain, from gathering to processing to the pipelines, you want to see how quickly you can move out of those businesses. Because so long as government remain in those businesses, there is absolutely no magic. There is no magic you are going to do. So how fast they can get out of those businesses and let people who know how to run those businesses run them will be very critical, because 4 years is very short.
Part of your qualifications and pedigrees, accounting and all of that, we'll get to that in a second. But where do you see the place of monetary policy of the central bank? It is in setting interest rate, in deciding reserve ratios for both public and private sector deposits. Do you think we need some haircut, as it were, headroom very quickly, so that the banks can claw back some of these billions sitting in the central bank coffers for onward lending to the industrial manufacturing sectors?
Well, the CBN, the new administration in CBN, when they came in, tried to see if they can redirect monetary policy towards growth, because the previous administration was very clear. We wanted financial stability. Our concern was stable exchange rates, stable interest rates that are consistent with our targets of 6 to 9, and so it worked well. When the new government tried at the beginning to say, now we want to pursue growth, we'll try and see if we can encourage the banking sector to grow. But very quickly, when the oil prices crashed, they found that they themselves had to increase the MPR to 13%. So all the hope of reducing the MPR in order to ensure that you grow the economy was clearly went up in smoke. So the reality is that central bank is more likely to do what they are trying to do now, coming by way of stimulus intervention, look for packages with which you can, stimulate the economy, because the real opportunity for significant reduction in the MPR, bringing down the interest rates in the hope of engineering growth is very, very limited.
So let's run over this conversation. Very interesting one with you. We appreciate your time this morning. What do you make of the issues in petrol subsidy accounting between the Ministry of Finance and the petrol importers?
Well, I think you are struggling with the symptoms of the fundamental issue, which is that you have a subsidy regime. If you did not have a subsidy regime, you won't be worried about how you account for it, who is accounting, who is not accounting. So long as you create this artificial structure of subsidy, where you now have to find people sit down and calculate, is this the right amount, you will continue to have. In any system that you have subsidies like this, that are subject to human calculations, you will always have it. So the real solution is get out the subsidy as fast as you can, and let the petroleum markets, like in any other part of the world, settle down to a very open market.
So you support subsidy removal in its entirety?
Very quickly.
Oh, not just that,
very quickly. I would have expected this outgoing administration to do it.
But it was done in January 2012.
Yes, the remaining subsidy should have gone as soon as possible. Because of election, everybody was afraid to do it. But I believe that either the old outgoing administration does it and takes credit
for it. 29?
Yeah, does it take credit for it, or once the new government comes in,
just a moment,
let it go and have the initial reactions, people protest and quarrel and everything. But once the benefits of subsidy starts coming, we will.
And that's a natural question. From your vantage point, what are the immediate benefits to the broader economy? Subsidy removal, 100%.
You remove subsidy. From the day you remove subsidy, you and I can go and plan and build a refinery, knowing that I can sell at any price. Just as I can do now in telecom. If I have enough money, I can set up a telecom business, sell recharge cards, and compete with everybody else. So what you want to do is get out the subsidy. Everybody that can build a refinery, 1,000 barrels per day, 1 million barrels a day.
Those are the power plants.
You can build, and the technology for refinery is a commodity that many of our young engineers have. It is not rocket science anymore. There are young people in the Niger Delta that are building refineries that are now classified as illegal.
In the forest.
Yes, that are classified as illegal.
So you could use those engineers.
So it's just a matter for you to open up the industry, remove this subsidy framework and say, look, if you have the technology, get a license, produce your products and sell.
Very interesting conversation. Well, thank you very much for your time this morning, Mr. Gabriel Idahosa, the CEO and head of consulting at Uhi Maji here in Lagos, but with operations in almost 80 countries around the world. We'll be back after the break. We'll talk still about the oil and gas sector, the Arepo village pipeline vandalism. There was a death reported over the weekend. What happened? We got one of the leaders in that community to talk to us here on the business side of that human angle story. We'll bring it all together, and that's coming next.